Hey everybody, welcome to another Art Talk Tuesday. My name is Jackie G and I'm with Gwartzman's Art Supplies in Toronto. I know it's been a while, it's been pretty busy and saw all kinds of great art materials. So I can't wait, that won't be today, but I will be having a special chat just to tell you about everything that I saw and all the new products that we have coming in. And yes, we still have had a lot of new products arriving. Today we have a special guest, so we'll be joining with Jimmy in a minute or so. And I wanted to tell you about a couple things coming up aside from our talk today. So today we are talking with Jimmy Leslie. If you have questions, if you had a question about anything about art materials, Jimmy's the guy. Jimmy is an amazing person to speak to about art materials. Last time we had him on, people went crazy and the questions, and it went on forever. So today, if you have questions, send them in. We're going to ask Jimmy some. I have some questions ready for Jimmy as well. We'll be able to do that. But I did want to tell you this Saturday, if you signed up already, we do have an artist demo. It's at 12 o'clock on Saturday. That's when it starts. Now, if you know our store, we have limited space. I would suggest you come early if you'd like a chair. There will probably be room for seating. Hello, Jimmy.
Hey, good to see you,
And
Jackie.
so it's nice to see you. So I'm just letting everybody know what's happening here over the next couple weeks. We do have, as I say, a demo artist on Saturday, and I met Nikki when I was at our trade show NAMTA. We had a great chat. She showed me what she's going to be using and some of the things she's going to be talking about. So if you signed up, as I say, I would suggest you come early. Seating or seats are limited. There will be probably some standing room, but it should be great. As I say, she's going to be testing out all new product, things we haven't had here before in the store. That being said, because we are having these great chats with Jimmy and Nikki and all things Winsor & Newton and Liquitex and Colart, we have a sale on all our Winsor & Newton products on now. So if it's something that you want to try, something you've been thinking about, something that Jimmy mentions that you may want to test, they're going to be on sale for the next little bit. And if you're not sure, we are having a demo table. So next Saturday from 11 to 5, we're going to have all the cool stuff set out so you can test the watercolors, the mediums, and we'll probably include some other things that we've been so lucky to receive in samples. So that's over the next 2 weeks from our great friends at Winsor & Newton and Liquitex. It's a really exciting couple weeks. There's more planned in the future. I will be doing a live. We haven't decided if it'll be next Tuesday or the following Tuesday because, as I say, there's so many new products, lots of new things. I want to tell you all about the trade show. I didn't post from there because I was too busy, but we'll let you know all about it. But I don't want to take away from our guest because we know we already have lots of people joining. And we do have some questions, so I'm going to give, I'm going to give Jimmy the
Okay.
floor. But Jimmy, we should wave
Yeah.
to everybody because we always get lots of waves, and I always forget to do
Yeah.
that.
It's
So
good to see
from wherever
everybody.
you're viewing us from, if it's North America or anywhere beyond, welcome. So nice to see you all. And again, whatever questions you have, please type them in. And Andrea's going to send them in or let me know, and we will get them all answered for you today in as much time that we have.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jack. Thanks for the great introduction. I see my niece joined too. So boy, I might hear something from her at some point. She's got a little wry sense of humor that I love.
Oh,
So
boy.
that's really fun as
Well,
well.
nothing that's going to get you in trouble, though.
That's right. Well, listen, Jackie, again, thanks for the great introduction. And you beat me to the punch. I was going to mention Nikki being in store this Saturday. So that's great. I'm glad you got to meet her. Everybody, she is a real treat. She knows her stuff. She's got a new book out on watercolor. So that's a great way to really be in person in store, and also the try it table. Wonderful ways to try product that we're going to be talking about today. I do want to mention, I had to look up, Jackie, the last time I was on for Art Talk Tuesday. I gave myself a little note here. It was July 18th, everyone, last year, 2023. So if you want to flip back on, once we're done here today, if you want to go back on Gwartzman's feed, you can go back to July 18th and you can see what we covered. But just a quick recap of what we did cover then. I showed my watercolor kit. Now I'm going to show that again because I've made some changes. We talked about color palette. We discussed gum arabic and oxgall mediums. And we also looked at lapis and rose madder and talked about light fastness. So this is by no means did you have to see that, but you can go back and check it out.
Thank you.
Now, Jackie, before I kind of dive into materials, which is obviously what we're here for, and I want to use some things and show people things, you want to throw a question or two out to me that you've got ahead of time, and we can start with that because that might also provoke things.
Sure. So I'll read you the questions that we had sent in to us.
Okay.
I did write down a couple myself, and they're all watercolor based. I do hope that everyone can ask us questions about, using maybe a water mixable oil, the artisan, or if they have any Liquitex or mixing products. What is the do's and don'ts? So that's why I'm trying to see if we get some other questions going. So one of the questions we received was, how important is using a colored ground versus a blank canvas when creating a piece?
Oh, that's a great, okay, I love that question because whoever had that question, I don't know if that was you, Jackie, or somebody else, but I kind of had something planned about that. So excellent question. Let's get into that.
Okay.
I'm going to actually flip my camera down and let's take a look at my work surface. So I was recently in Thailand, and let me see if I've got it open to the, no, I don't have it open to the right page, but that's okay. We're going to jump ahead. So I was in Thailand, and before I went, I was really just kind of testing in my sketchbook different colors that I wanted to include in my watercolor kit. And you can see all those. And then after I made some little swatches, I put X's next to the ones that I thought I wanted to take. I'll get back into that in a minute. But while I was there, and it continues to be something that influences what I'm doing now, I started making sketches. And I had never been to Thailand before. I was in Bangkok specifically, and this was from, I believe this was at the Grand Palace in Bangkok, and there was this beautiful temple here, and I made this little sketch. And I will often do sketches like this in watercolor because it's so quick, so easy to work with, so easy to set up, clean up. And in a sketchbook that you can see my hand here, and something that is in the palm of my hand, I can really work quite quickly. So I got back home, and this is actually something I'm working on. It's in progress right now. And this is cold pressed watercolor paper. This is gouache, which for anybody who's maybe uninitiated or doesn't know, gouache is simply opaque watercolor. So much more opaque, you can layer quite a bit. But here's the thing. If I was to put down this, I have this magenta ground down. All this pink you see popping through is the ground. So obviously I started with the white, the white watercolor paper, and I've got it taped off. Now, to answer that question fully, to say, is it important or not? The reason I like it, no, it's not necessarily important. I like it though, because I think the white surface can be really, really intimidating. It can be hard to, kind of get started sometimes. So when I'm working, I like to get rid of that white surface. And I also like to think about, well, what do I want to have happen in the painting that I'm going to make? And I knew that I had a lot of greens, a lot of shrubbery, a lot of this beautiful topiary that was just so beautifully carved and or trimmed up and everything. So I wanted this warm, hot pink to play against those greens, right? My complementary colors of red and green. Now, here's what I did. Jackie, you mentioned the sister brand to Winsor & Newton, Liquitex. So here's what I did. If I was to put gouache or watercolor down, they are water soluble. If I put something wet on them, I could lift. So I took Liquitex acrylic ink, and it's very thin, almost watercolor like, well, ink like, and I put that down because that's an acrylic that dried, no problem. So when I work on top, I'm not picking up the pink with those greens, which could end up giving me a muddy color. So we'll talk more about that process a little bit as we get into it more. But that's a great question. I really think it's up to you. I would also say this, sometimes a colored, or what we might call a toned ground, can help set a mood. So sometimes, let's say if I was painting something that was dense foliage in a forest, lots of greens and earth tones and stuff like that, starting with a green ground means that I can work quickly, and any little spots that I don't fill in, they're kind of already done for me, which I like that little, I like the piece working for me. So yeah, great question.
So actually, I wanted to ask you something
Yeah.
about exactly what you just said. So you said you used the acrylic ink
Yes.
that you put down as a base. Now, what would be the difference then between using the acrylic ink, or could you use like an acrylic gouache, or
Yeah.
thin out your acrylic paint and do that? What would be the differences in using those instead of the ink?
Yeah. Excellent follow-up. Sometimes I actually might use the acrylic gouache, Jackie. Part of that was the color I wanted. I had available in the ink, so I used what I had. Here's the one thing I would tell everybody, though. When you're working with watercolor, or you're working with traditional gouache, watercolor-based gouache, as opposed to what Jackie just said, everyone was acrylic gouache. And let me kind of just dispel a little bit of something that could get confusing for people. So typically as artists, as art retailers, when we're talking about gouache, we're talking about a watercolor based gouache. So gum arabic is the binder, it's the base, same as watercolor. It's simply more opaque.
Yeah.
When we're talking about acrylic gouache, it is an acrylic in every respect, except what it's doing is trying to mimic gouache-like properties. And two of the biggest properties, characteristics, let's say, I can think of when we're talking about a traditional gouache is that it's very opaque, and that it tends to be very matte in its finish. So acrylic gouache, still acrylic. Here's what I would say about that, Jackie. The acrylic ink is already a very fluid viscosity like watercolor. So when I put that down, it's not on paper, it's not an appreciable layer. It seeps into the paper. If you get too thick with acrylic gouache, with that acrylic paint, and then try to work on top of that, it can be harder for that first layer. In my case, in this gouache painting, traditional gouache painting I'm working on, it could get harder for that to sit on the surface, because the acrylic is sort of almost sealing the surface and not letting the gouache or watercolor seep in. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
good, excellent.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. When using a watercolor in the tube, how do you prevent from using too much? How do you not waste color from the tube?
Oh boy, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so there's two things, and we're going to get some paint out to illustrate this a little bit. Let me preface it though. Part of it's trial and error, I think. I always hate to say that, though, leading into a question, because it doesn't answer a question specifically. But unfortunately, a lot with art is trial and error. Here's the one thing I would say. I totally 100% understand not wanting to waste materials. Listen, I don't want to waste anything. I work for an art materials company. I can often get materials quite easily. I still don't want to waste things. I just simply don't like doing that. I also used to be a college art professor and did not want my students to waste things. Conversely, though, I would say if you're too stingy with putting things out, it's hard to actually get into the materials and really discover what they can do and benefit your process. And the analogy I would make is if you're working with food in a kitchen, if you're learning to cook and you're just taking this smidgen of a piece of chicken, how are you really going to understand it and taste it and work with it and experiment? That could be awful tough. So let's switch down again to my surface here.
Okay.
And what I'll do, I'm gonna, oh, we didn't switch there. Sorry. There we go. Now we're switched. So I've just got some cold pressed watercolor paper out right now, and I'm gonna take this color. This is cobalt turquoise. Really beautiful color. It's a color I actually took to Thailand.
Wow.
And
one of my favorites.
Just it's a gorgeous color. I'm going to put a little bit out like that. Now I'm putting it directly out on the paper just because I'm working for you folks here. I might have a palette to do that. Sometimes I like to use these little enamel palettes. Anything slick that you can clean up easily. But this is quite nice. And I'm going to take a rather large brush. This is the Winsor & Newton
Mhm.
synthetic, professional synthetic sable, and it's a 19 millimeter, or let's see, in Imperial, that's a 3/4 inch brush. Now, one thing I'm going to mention before I lay out this color, this brush is real. Notice how stiff that is.
Yes.
That's on purpose. I was kind of taking these. I'm in my studio right now, and I was taking this back and forth between my studio and our offices. So you know what I did? I took some gum arabic in its liquid form,
Yes.
and I coated the brush, and that dries on here and gives a nice stiff, so that these hairs don't get bent all over the place. And what I can do is I can take a little bit of my water, and gum arabic is water soluble, so I'll just go like this, kind of do that a few times, and I might have to pull some of that out now. Yep, and I can feel it. Gum arabic, remember, is the binder in watercolor and gouache, so it's kind of sticky. So I'm gonna get some more out of there. So it's just a little tip I like sometimes. If you're traveling with your brushes, you know, a brush case is good. A brush, you know, roll or wrap, that's always good. But even so, yeah, now this is coming back to life, right? Now you can see
Yeah.
each individual hair there. So it's a nice way to just dip that in a little bit of gum arabic. I'm going to do it one more time. There's just a little bit more at the end. Otherwise, it's really simple to get off. Nice way to protect it, hold the point. Yeah, there we go. We're back to normal there. Great. So I'm going to put that off to the side. And I'm going to just grab a little bit of this cobalt, and I'm going to lay this out. Now, you can see you get a lot of color out of that. Now, one of the things I might suggest to you, and this is what we call, this is a granulating color. So you're going to see here, we're going to see as it dries, but even
Mhm.
here, we can see how the pigment particles are settling in, and I'm going to get it really close, settling into the hollows, the texture of that paper. And as it dries, it's going to do that more so. And that's because the cobalt pigment are rather large pigments. So they want to just settle into those hollows, and that can create a nice texture. And I'm going to show you where that is dry here. I have it dry, that same color here, cobalt turquoise, on another piece of paper dry already. And it's blending with another color. It's blending with lemon yellow deep. So back to the question, though, at hand. That's a very small amount of color, but it lets out quite a bit. So part of it depends on the size you're working. But one of the things I might suggest is I would say get yourself a palette. Oops, there's the rest of my studio there. Get yourself a palette that has wells in it.
Mhm.
And if you can get one that has a lid, like Jackie, you might have, I'm going to guess this, so just let me know if I'm wrong. Do you have at Gwartzman's, do you have the, what they call the Stay Wet
Mhm.
palettes? Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
everyone, a Stay Wet palette, so go online afterwards and you can find those at Gwartzman's. Stay Wet palette has a lid on it, and you have wells. You can use this for acrylic too. You can put your watercolor in there. And what I like to do, I don't have one in my studio right now. I happen to have it in my house for some reason. I was working in there the other day. You can put a little sponge, or the Stay Wet actually has I don't even know what it is, Jackie. I don't remember. It's sort of like a spongy
That's
membrane in it.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a yellow cellulose type sponge.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
thin, but absorbs a lot of
yeah.
water.
And if you lost that, or if you didn't have it, a little sponge would do, a paper towel. What you're basically doing is making like a humidor, like people would
Yes.
use for cigars. It's creating a humid compartment, and that way your watercolors will stay and not dry out. If you don't do that, you're going to have it on the palette and it's going to dry out. Now, that's not totally a deal breaker. Let's go back down to my surface again, and we'll come down here. And let me show you the difference between, so we've got our cobalt turquoise right there, a gorgeous, gorgeous color. I'm going to put my glasses back. I need my reading glasses, Jackie. Then we've got here, does this say on the side? Yes, this is a little pan. And let's get that in focus. That's cobalt violet. So that's a watercolor pan.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes what people will do is they'll take some little receptacle. This is just the watercolor pans that they come in, or the plastic that the watercolor pans come in. Some people will squeeze into a pan and let that dry. And people will often ask me, can you do that? And I say, yes, you can do it. You can do it. However, what'll happen sometimes if you use the tube color, if I was to let that dry, it could become brittle and what we call friable. And that's friable is Friable. Friable. Don't worry, there's no quiz on this later on.
That's
But
good.
that's how you spell Friable.
Yeah.
And the tube colors, because you have the lid on it, have less less glycerin content. Glycerin acts as a wetting agent, has less glycerin content in it. So you want to keep that lid on there. So when they dry out, they can become a bit brittle, whereas the pan colors have more glycerin content. So it's easy to keep wetting them. They'll last a long time. And when you if you were to put your brush into a pan that you created from our tube color over here, it could be harder to lift that color up and get that to re-wet easily. It's not impossible, and I
Right.
don't want you to think that you can't do that. You can. Now, notice this, just while I happen to be laying this down. Remember, cobalt turquoise, cobalt violet, and we're seeing, let's raise this back up, we're seeing some of that same granulation occurring here, even a little bit more so with the cobalt violet. So that's one of the things I would suggest. Use one of those stay wet palettes if that makes sense for you. You know, play around with that, or you might simply use pans, which go a long way.
So let me ask you a question then, because I know over the years we have been asked. Let's say you have your tube of cobalt turquoise and it's gotten hard in the middle. And I'm sure someone is already thinking about
Yeah.
this while we've been chatting. Can you slice open that? Can you cut open the tube, open it? Now, you just said that it's different from using a cake to what's in the tube, but is the paint still usable? Can you still save some of it
Maybe.
if it's hard?
Maybe.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go further with, again, I don't love maybe answers, but let's go a little bit further, and I'll tell you why. First of all, again, maybe it's the dad in me, even though my kids are much older now. Be careful if you slice open the tube, right? Slice away, please. Jackie and I don't want to hear comments later on that you sliced your thumb. So do that. You may be able to do that, Jackie. One of the things I would suggest is take a little bit of gum arabic mixed with water. Again, that's the binder, right? So this, what's happened in the tube, it's hardened likely because it was not sealed properly, maybe. Also the other thing, I don't do this myself all the time. I should, I don't. Clean off the neck of the tubes. Just, when you're done, take a little wet rag, a paper towel, and just do that real quick and clean off the neck. You'll get a tighter seal when we go and put this back on. Mine's crooked there. Maybe I need to clean it more. There it goes. That's on there good and tight without, I don't have to crank it down too much. But if I had to cut that open, water alone probably wouldn't do the trick really well. So I would take a little bit of mixture, a few drops of gum arabic, give that a try. If you do that and it doesn't work, well, listen, at least you tried. Here's the other thing with art materials. And I know we're talking watercolor today, but if we're talking about, something that you get gifted to you, whether that's oil, acrylic, or watercolor, gouache, or you get it at a garage sale somewhere, I understand the temptation of buying something really cheap at a garage sale. I get it. Or somebody gives you something, that's fine. They may be okay, but do the old, if it acts like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, right? It's probably a duck. So if you smell the paint being off a little bit, don't do it. If it's chunky, if it's not spreading out evenly, don't do it. If it's got any other odd characteristic that doesn't match what you know to be your good fresh products, don't bother doing it. Because first of all, two things are going to happen. Probably the experience of using it isn't going to be all that fun, right? And if I go back to a cooking analogy, it'd be like using a pan that just doesn't heat evenly and stuff burns, or my wife hates it if we rent an Airbnb and it's got an electric stove. She hates that. Those things can ruin the experience of working with the material. So that's one thing. The other thing, sometimes problems don't show up until later on. So to me, why risk your hard work and the passion that you put into it? So just kind of be careful about those things. But otherwise, yeah, give it a try. You can usually do that. I will say this: if it is acrylic, though, you're not going to bring that back. That's not going to happen. But watercolor, good chance you might be able to use some of that for sure.
Okay. Well, you know what? Then what about oil paint? Since we're just talking generally, what is the longevity then of a tube of oil paint?
Oh, that's That's a really good question. So I have it in our studio in our offices here in New Jersey. I have a swatch of what was called London oil paint from Winsor & Newton. Now, Jackie, in your store, you would have Winton, which is the introductory or what people call the student range for
Yeah.
Winsor & Newton oil paints. A long time ago in the 70s, 80s, it used to be, it wasn't called Winton, it was called London. Okay, so that having been said, I don't know where I got this tube, Jackie, but again, it's going back 70s, 80s. I think somebody gave it to me.
I was
And
going to say, you know what? I'm really glad I don't remember it.
oh, there you go. Fair enough. Let's.
Because you can date yourself. I'm not doing that.
I was a little kid in the 70s, so yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, all right, we'll reveal later on. So I put out the paint, and again, didn't smell weird. It brushed out beautifully. This is an over 40-year-old tube, probably 45-year-old tube of paint, if not a little older. Generally speaking, what we say, and this is very general, we say that the shelf life of the products unopened, that's key, unopened, is roughly around 7 to 10 years. Now, we don't put a stamp on that. It's not written anywhere. It's not on a website. Wortsman's is not going to have that on the website either, because there are so many unknown factors.
Mhm.
Has somebody not opened it but left it in the attic for a long time? It's sat on a radiator, or radiator, however you want to say that, in a house. Has it been in a terribly cold environment, extreme environments for a long time? Those can all affect things. Or has it been opened? And again, sometimes what happens, Jackie, is somebody will have a paint and they'll contact us. They'll contact our tech helpline, and they'll say, my paint seems to be drying out rather quickly. I said, okay, do you seal it after each use? Yes, I do. But when you start digging a little bit more, what they mean is they seal it after each painting session. It's left open during the actual painting process, which could be 3-4 hours or so on. And when oil paint gets that air, it starts to oxidize, and you're not going to get that back. But you could, if I was to grab down in my work surface here, I guarantee you I have tubes of oil paint 15-20 years old. Might be colors I don't use that much anymore, and they're fine if you take care of them. So yeah, just kind of be aware of that, everyone. That's a good question though.
What about the artists that have their big, and I've been to some artist studios that they have like an old door or a table that they're using, and they've got loads of paint. Now, normally, from what you're saying, I mean, they'll scoop underneath or work at it. Is it because it's always being worked at that it sort of keeps it in a better condition?
Yeah, so we're talking oil here now.
Oil paint, yes, we are.
Yeah. So a few things will happen. If you're working with oil paint, for everybody, oil paint's going to dry in about 2 to 14 days to the touch. That's important. To the touch. So colors, generally speaking, earth colors, maybe like ochres, umbers, siennas, and so on. Those may be dry to the touch in about 2 days, 3 days, something like that. You might have other colors, like I'm thinking of a color like alizarin crimson or lamp black. That may be 2 weeks until it's dry to the touch, right? Because again, oil paint needs air to oxidize. It also likes heat. So if you were working with an oil painting and you wanted to dry as quickly as you could without any sort of additives or anything like that, any sort of dryers, put it in a window where it's going to get sun all day and it's going to get heat from there. And you could try this out. Put a swatch of oil paint down and on a surface and put that away. Stick it somewhere in the room away from light and heat. Put the other one in the window. It's going to be a dramatic difference. It's really going to speed it up quite a bit. When somebody is working with a palette with oil paint, they're probably, first of all, it's thick. It takes longer to dry. And when it oxidizes, meaning it takes on oxygen. Oil paint does the opposite from watercolor and acrylic. They evaporate the water content. So they're essentially losing weight, right? Okay. Oil paint is essentially gaining weight. It's taking on oxygen. So you want to limit the oxygen that it gets, and that's going to preserve it longer. So when somebody has a thick, hunk of oil paint that they squeeze on a palette or any surface, it'll start to skim over first, and you can usually peel that skin off of there and still get to that paint underneath, and that's going to be okay. But what I would simply do is cover an oil painting palette with something like a saran wrap or something like that that seals off the oxygen. That's going to keep it for the longest time for sure.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea. Okay, so you've already answered the
Yeah.
third question that was
Oh.
sent in, which was about, are watercolor in tubes a different quality than the pan ones or different formulas? So you sort of answered that one already. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. No, definitely different quality. And I think the reason I'm making a little bit of a guess here, Jackie, but I think the reason sometimes it is a would you call it? I don't know if you call it a myth, but I guess people often do think pans are lesser quality than tubes. I think that goes back to our earliest days as kids and working with art materials. Because one of the cool things I've always found about art, everybody's done, almost everybody, 99.9% of people have made art at one time in their life. And it was usually as kids in a kindergarten class or something like that, if they had that experience. And what they often had is a very cheap set of watercolor paints.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows them. They came in the circular cakes. They were about the size of a quarter or so. There was a brush in that looked like it had 2 or 3 wonky hairs that went all over the place. And it was really hard to use, and they got really brittle, and they were a mess because all the kids used them. So I think our connotation is, oh, those weren't really good. Those weren't really quality. And they probably weren't, because they were made for the market of little kids who were going to
Mark it
abuse
up.
them and mess them up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're buying, if you're buying from a reputable brand like Winsor & Newton, the tube pan color, it's just a different disbursement. So let me show you. Let's go back down to this surface before we take another question. So last time on July 18th, I showed, let me raise up a little bit more. I showed this little Army Navy bag that I have, and it just, just clips. It's got 2 little pockets on the side. Let's go a little higher. Yeah, there we go. I throw this in a backpack when I travel. When I go to my office, our offices, I take it. And now there's not much in here at the moment because I'm going to show you why. I do have a rag in there. I've got a kneaded eraser. And normally, last time on July 18th on Art Talk Tuesday, I showed this little Winsor & Newton kit. It's an old one we don't make anymore, so it's kind of special to me. You can see it's missing some pans. The lid comes off and is a little water reservoir. It's missing some pans because I took 2 of those to go to Thailand. Now, I got to admit, I'm a little nutty when I pack. I am sort of like the Tour de France cyclist who swaps out a sprocket because it's 0.01 ounces or grams, lighter.
Yeah.
So I didn't take this kit. Now this is tiny, okay? But here's what I did take. The Winsor & Newton Cotman range.
Oh,
Winsor & Newton Cotman is our introductory range.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very, let's hold these both up together. It's thinner, not by a whole lot, but it is. And I can hold a bunch of colors in here. It's got a tiny little brush.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of like a, can I get that out of there? I'm gonna use another brush here. My fingers are too chunky. There we go. This is sort of like a little James Bond brush.
Yeah.
I was in TSA one time. They said, "What is that?" And they had me open it up. So I can just pull that out and stick that in there. And I've got this tiny, tiny little brush. This is great for tiny little sketches. So here are some of the colors that I chose to go with me to Thailand. And I'll lay a few of those out here. And I think I'll actually use this brush. This is what we would call a rigger.
Yeah.
Rigger. Rigger is very long, thin brush like that. It's actually got some gum arabic on it. So I'm going to dip it in my water here. And it's almost like a automotive pinstripers brush. That's the best way I can explain it. You just get a little bit more of that gum arabic off. And it gives you really long fluid line. Yeah, there we go. It's all revived and back. So I took, I took a little bit of transparent orange. I'm just going to lift some of that out of there and put that down. I'm going to get you closer to the surface for this now. I can get really long fluid lines with this. So I like it for anything that has a delicate nature to it. I can, even with a light touch, how tiny I can get with that. And I took that, when I travel, I start thinking about colors like this because I was thinking about the robes of Buddhist monks.
Okay.
Yeah, that I would see in Thailand. And I didn't know if for landscape purposes I would even use the color, but it was a connotation I had. I thought about other warm colors because uh, 98 degrees Fahrenheit there, which what would that be in Celsius? That would be about, gosh, I think about 30
30,
Celsius. Yeah, 30,
30,
32.
35,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. So
Hot.
I've also got some cadmium-free orange in here. So another orange, which is much more opaque.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a little bit of permanent rose in there, which gives me this very pink magenta color. So I was really thinking about heat and warmth. I was thinking about yellow ochre I had in the mix. Other earth colors, because going to see these temples, which are very, very old, made me think about history. So I have earth colors like yellow ochre. I've got a little burnt umber in there. I can mix a lot of shades of color. So with this cobalt blue, I'm going to turn this way, cobalt turquoise. I guess it's a turquoise is a form of blue. I can put that down
Mm-hmm.
and look at the lovely with cadmium-free yellow. So a non-cadmium version of that. I can dump that in there and get that beautiful
That's a beautiful
warm.
green.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
lovely? And then I can do the same thing here. Here I can start with a base. The only green I brought with me was a sap green, which does have a bit of a yellowish tinge to it, but it's or a warm undertone, but it's definitely more earthy. And I'll drop in some of that same yellow. You can see that's a bit more muted,
Mm-hmm.
a bit more muted. It depends on how much turquoise I bring into the mix. And again, same thing, because I have a few yellows with me here. I'll take the yellow ochre, and this time I'll put a little bit of the cobalt turquoise in with that. And you can see we get a very, very muted tone. So I really think about all the different things I can do with a very limited palette there. And what I also took in that kit, I took a little sort of foldable watercolor carrier there. So what I would do is I would have this, and then what else would I take here? I would wrap a rubber band around that. And my rag, I'd wrap a rubber band around that. And then I would take my Winsor & Newton fine liner for any
Mm-hmm.
sketching. I would take a little mechanical pencil like that, and I would take this little brush here and just wrap around that, and I could fit the whole thing in my back pocket, and I'm ready to roll. And this is just this is an old, again, you can't see much of it. It's a Cotman, so Winsor & Newton Cotman, again, the student range of synthetic brush. And I cut the thing down years ago, wrapped a little tape around there so it wasn't rough. And that's just something that I can fit in, and made my own tiny brush
Sure.
right there. And for me, doing stuff like that, is again about traveling light. I think whether you're traveling or whether you're in your own studio like I am now, you have to find a way to work with your supplies in a way that promotes work.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you are somebody who, let's say you're somebody watching right now and you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of a newbie to all of this. And I really don't know if watercolor, oil, or acrylic is for me. Well, then I would say, if something like oil that's going to take a really long time to dry, it can be quite messy. There's more setup involved. There's more cleanup involved. And if you feel like, well, that's not my personality, and I know that anything where I have a lot of prep and a lot of cleanup is not my thing, then don't do that. Then find the medium that allows you to be able to create and have a good time doing that. And that's not a right or wrong. It's not, don't listen to what anybody else says. You have to kind of go with your gut on that. So
I agree with that.
I forget what the question was. I hope I answered it.
No, I listen, this is the whole idea, but I do have, I write down or I get ideas from what you're
Yeah.
saying. And I just want to mention anybody who's just tuned in. My name is Jackie G, and I'm with Gwartzman's Art Supplies in Toronto. And our guest is Jimmy Leslie. artist extraordinaire. Yes, former professor, but now teaches you everything you want to know. He works with Colart, which is one of our suppliers, and also was part of a collective, and they are amazing at teaching. So if you have any questions while we've been chatting, or anything that if you've just tuned in and you want to know, just type it in, and we're going to do our best to answer it. Maybe you've not heard some of the things we talked about, but if you did, that's okay. We can revisit it. But Jimmy, something that I've noticed, and a color that you actually said you took on your trip, was transparent orange.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that the transparent colors in the ranges have become extremely popular. And I just wondered, because a lot of colors are already considered often transparent, what makes those special? What makes them stand out? Why are they so different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, I think generally speaking, when people hear the art medium of watercolor, they think, well, it's transparent. That's just all across the board. It's transparent. That's not necessarily so. We think about that. So if you look at the tubes themselves, what you'll see, and maybe we'll do that when I flip back around, but what you'll see is you'll see a little square, and if it's just an outline, it's just an outline, that's it, means it's transparent. If it's a square that's half filled in and half not filled in, sort of like a diver down flag, that's going to be semi-transparent or semi-opaque. And if it's filled in, if it's a black square, that's opaque. So why? Generally speaking, we're talking about the pigment particles and the way the pigments react and the way they might refract light. So yeah, what happens with a true, and so sorry, if we're using watercolor, we're putting things down in such thin layers that it often all appears transparent to us. You can take an opaque color and thin it to such a degree that you make it transparent, right? You can do that with almost anything. So let's go back down and we'll show you the surface here, and I'm just going to move this over here like this. So let's go back to that color that you mentioned, Jackie, and that was transparent orange, and I'm going to lay that out, and we'll put that down. And yes, it's a transparent color, which means that the paper is really showing through in these areas. Obviously, the more I wet it too, the more transparent I get that to be. So what's happening is light is coming down, it's hitting that paper, and it's reflecting back to us through that paint layer. You're going to have something that's quite luminous. Now, that might be different than something like, we've been using some cobalt colors like cobalt turquoise, cobalt violet. This one happens to be, whoops, let me get my glasses there back on. Yeah, this happens to be cobalt green deep. So cobalts are metals. They tend to be bigger pigments. And let's just squeeze some of that out. And we'll put that out here. And I'm going to just clean off my brush real well. I think I'll use the flat brush again here. And I'm going to take some of this. And I'm going to get it more wet. Now, as I lay that out, you can see where there's a little bit more water on the edge, maybe that edge of the brush. It's got a little bit more transparent. Let's pull that up here, right? That's really a much more opaque color. And, you know, you can kind of test these out for yourself. As I was thinking about showing stuff today, let me reach over here. Yeah, I've got some little color swatches I've made. So a lot of times what I might do, sometimes it's before a demo we're giving, but sometimes it's just me just kind of playing and reminding myself what the characteristics of colors are. I think as an artist, sometimes I just start working and I forget to really investigate, and that curiosity I had as a student. So let me just show you. Yeah, here we go. Just using a pencil and just making marks across here. You can see permanent rose, a very transparent pigment compared to Indian red. Yes, you can still see some of the pencil through there, but way less. This looks like I almost put the pencil on top. Here we get the same kind of thing, and in each case, the colors going over that. Phthalo blue, very transparent, probably semi-transparent or semi-opaque with Payne's gray right here. Also, the fact that you're just dealing with a color that's very similar to the pencil in tone anyway,
right,
is going to make that difference. Let's see what else I have here. Yeah, oh, here's transparent. Okay, that worked out well. Here's transparent orange. Oh no, sorry, that's cadmium orange hue right here. And here's sepia as well. So sepia is really covering that mark quite well. So that can be a nice way to kind of play and understand your colors a little bit more and what they do. And I'm often advocating that because I feel like I've spent so much of my career teaching other people. And sometimes what I find, everybody, is that I'm here in my studio and I'm working sometimes and I hit a roadblock. And usually, this is not always, but usually what happens is I'm so caught up in what I'm doing, I'm not asking myself questions anymore. I'm not asking myself critical questions. And when I slow down and I think, what would I say to somebody else? And you have to be really aware. This is, I hate to throw around the term mindfulness. It's been used in so many different ways in corporate settings and everything else these days. But if you are very, very mindful of what you're doing, you step back and say, what have I been told? Or in my case, what have I told students? I realize, oh, I've always told people that they should have fun and they should play in a sketchbook off to the side and really reinvestigate what their colors can do for
Right.
them. And I may have said this when I was on Art Talk Tuesday back in July last year, but it bears repeating. I think if you have some friends and you want to try out a new color, go grab one, split the cost of it, and share. Or like I'm using, in here, I'm using this happens to be a rough
Mhm.
watercolor paper. I gotta hide my face there. Rough watercolor paper. Doesn't matter if it's rough, cold press, or hot press.
Right.
You don't have to buy a whole block. You could buy a single sheet at Gwartzman's. Sheet's about centimeters wise. I don't know, 22 by 30 inches or so.
Yeah.
And you could, so it's if I go back here, it's big. And you could cut that up. You could make your own little sample sheets, distribute that among 3 friends. That's not going to cost you. And you could try out that paper to see if you like it. So there's a lot of ways to investigate, to have fun without it impacting your wallet before you make a purchase. Of course, like we were talking earlier, this Saturday, Nikki Tracos, one of our artists, is going to be in Gwartzman's, and then there's going to be a try it table as well. Those are awesome times to really, because Jackie and I are talking about this stuff, but it would be the same thing, if it's a cooking show, right? Cooking shows are cool, but it's not the same as you being with me. I'm like, Jackie, taste this. And you're like, oh, that's good. There's no trust involved
Oh,
there.
Jimmy,
You can just go.
I trust you. Don't
Well,
worry.
that's nice. I do appreciate that. But yeah, but it's right. You could talk about food all day long, or you could give me a taste of it.
Yeah.
So do try to to put some play into it, especially if you are a group of friends who are, and especially if you're all investigating this stuff together and it's new to you. Because I and Jackie know as well, knows all too well that this can be very intimidating for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Just, try and get people to try and relax and just enjoy it. And you were mentioning about, making your own swatches. And I've
Mm.
noticed that a lot of people are starting to do that. The one nice thing about it as well is the question, going back to one of the first questions was, how much paint do you use? It doesn't really take a lot to create that swatch. You just need a
No.
tiny bit when you're swatching out. So you don't have to be worried that you're using up too much paint or too little. It's just to get that color down on the paper.
Yeah, it's so tiny, and I think also the other thing when it comes to colors too, and again, this goes for whomever is watching, who might be able to join Nikki in store this Saturday. You can see colors in action. You might be able to see artwork. Go to shows too if you can, or follow artists that you find inspiration with on Instagram right here, and you might see a color and ask them. Artists love to share things. At least most that I know love to say, oh yeah, that's one of my favorite colors. It's X, and I love it because it does this. That can be a great way. So let me go back down to the surface here. I'll
Sure.
show you a few things here. Um, Let me move this out of the way. I kind of grabbed a few things off my wall. Oh, these are cold weather paintings, and I'm ready for warm. You know what? Maybe I'll show you that, but let me do this first. Yeah, let me go to this happens to be gouache, and let me get my glasses back on so you see what I'm looking at. When I'm looking at paintings like this, I'm finding that this was in the Catskills of New York State. let's see, in 2021 this was near a house I rented with my wife and kids. And in all this foliage, which we think of as green, and there is definitely a lot of green, you can see I'm getting a lot of blue in the mix as well. So down here is phthalo blue. Some of that's mixed with some of the greens that I have in here to create almost more like a viridian green. You can also see some of that permanent rose that I put a swatch down. I'm bringing that into the mix in some of the trunks here. To break things up, there's a little bit of that transparent orange because that's been a favorite of mine since I believe we launched that in 2019. And then look at the tree trunks in the back. Very, very deep violet and purple. So you can really have a lot of fun with color like that. Here's another one. And this is a little, I would call it a fire pit. That's not what it is. This is actually a little coal burning stove. Somebody in my neighborhood threw it out. It looked like it was from the 1800s. So I dragged it home and put it in my backyard because I wanted to save it. It was in the garbage. And you can see here from yellows to oranges to blues to violets, because this was nighttime, to a lot of that transparent orange to my other greens. I'm really trying to push the amount of color. I consider myself a colorist, so I'm really trying to push that. And here's a good example where I'm using that rigor to get these fine vines. This
Right.
this was a creek near the woods near my house, and then back to these cold weather ones. Same thing here. Really playing with that rigger brush, which gives me these fine reeds poking through the snow, where this is a much more muted, much more earthy look. And then, but even in something like this snow scene, the shadows,
Yes.
getting the violets and the blues in there, or the deep greens that I'm getting in the water here. This is like sort of a bamboo forest along that same creek, just a different part of it. So, you can really have fun by really pushing the boundaries of what color can do. And it's not a right or wrong thing, right? So I think you have to determine, who are you as an artist, or who do you aspire to be as an artist? I ask that question because, are you looking at, like, I make what I would call representational work. It represents what it is, but it is not photorealistic work. I'm really pushing the boundaries of color a bit. I'm pushing towards a little bit of abstraction in some areas, because that's a mode of expression that I like. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just different, like we all are. And we can all have a lot of fun and do a lot of cool stuff. So kind of consider who you are and what you want to do.
I think that is great advice for anyone. I know it's something that we get asked all the time. So you saying it, sometimes it's better than hearing it from the art supply stores.
Well,
But you know what? We do appreciate it because I
yeah.
think there's always that fear that we're doing something wrong. And, even often taking a class, they may say that you're, not, you're pushing the boundaries, but they may say you're doing it wrong. I hope not. I think the whole idea with art is you have to try and experiment and sometimes just go outside the lines, go outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, if we all did it the same way, I can't even imagine. Could you imagine what would be the point of going to art shows if we all did the same thing? If we all had the same mode of expression? If every time we turned on music, it was the same thing? Or, like I said, I was in Thailand last month. If I went there and met everybody that I would meet here or up in Canada, I want new. I want new cultures. I want new people. I want new experiences. And I think art can be very much like that. Jackie, I know we're getting up against the clock. What
Yep.
other questions? Because
I think,
I realized there's a million other things we could cover.
you know what? I think you blew everybody away with everything you talked about. We didn't get any additional questions
Okay.
today. But we can save, some ideas for the next time because I know that everybody always enjoys hearing from you, Jimmy.
Oh,
Um,
great.
so you know what? Why don't we just end now so we can continue chatting for another time?
Yep.
And if those of you that really enjoy it, please let us know. Don't forget to like us on Instagram and check us out. Again, we do have our demo this week with Nikki in the store from 12 to 2. It is sort of sold out. We only have a limited number of seating. So if you are signed up, please come early. If you'd like to join us, great to see you in our store in Toronto. Again, we're with Gwartzman's Art Supplies, and our guest has been Jimmy Leslie. Oh, great to talk to you always, Jimmy. I don't think between our emails and chatting we ever run out of things to talk about.
Oh, thank you. This is really a pleasure of mine. It's a really wonderful part of my day to be able to do this. And I thank everybody for tuning in. And thanks for having me,
Right.
Jackie.
Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you again. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook and any other social media. We got lots going on here at Quartzman's. And I look forward to chatting with you again. Hope you have a great day, great week, and keep on creating. All right. Bye-bye for now, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bye-bye.